They say love happens when you least expect it. They say when you know, you know. But what if what feels like destiny is actually familiarity? What if the spark you call magic is simply an old wound, recognizing its reflection? Some people don't fall in love, they plunge. Before the first disagreement, before the silence reveals character, before time has done its quiet testing. It feels beautiful at first, intense, consuming, cinematic. But why does it often burn out just as quickly? Why does the heart race towards someone it barely knows? And why does the same pattern repeat, even after it hurts? This is not about hopeless romantics. It is about something quieter, something learned, something wired. Tonight we explore the psychology of people who fall in love too fast, and what that urgency may truly be trying to protect. Let's begin. There is a moment. It feels electric. A glance that lingers half a second longer than expected. A laugh that feels strangely familiar. A conversation that flows as if it has already happened before. And suddenly something inside you whispers, "This is it." It doesn't feel reckless. It feels certain. People who fall in love too fast often describe this moment as recognition. Not attraction alone, recognition. As if the other person is not new, but rediscovered. As if fate has finally stopped playing games. But recognition of what? Because sometimes what feels like destiny is simply familiarity. And familiarity does not always mean safety. It can also mean repetition. When you meet someone and the chemistry is instant, your body responds before your mind has time to evaluate. Your heart rate shifts. Your attention narrows. The world becomes quieter around them. Their messages light up your nervous system like a spark in dry grass. It feels alive, and aliveness can be addictive. But here is the subtle truth. Intensity creates the illusion of depth. You may know their favorite color. You may know their childhood story. You may know their fears. But do you know how they handle disappointment? Do you know how they behave when bored? Do you know who they are when they are not trying to be chosen? Falling fast often skips the slow unfolding. It leaps over observation and lands directly in attachment. The mind begins building a future before the present has been fully understood. You imagine trips together, shared mornings, permanent closeness, and none of it feels irrational. It feels hopeful, but hope, when accelerated, can quietly become projection. The rush itself becomes proof. It feels this strong, so it must be real. Yet the body can generate the same surge in the presence of unpredictability as it does in the presence of passion. The nervous system does not always distinguish between excitement and anxiety. Both raise the pulse. Both narrow focus. Both create urgency. And urgency feels romantic. You may find yourself checking your phone constantly, replaying conversations, interpreting small pauses as meaningful. The connection becomes central. Quickly. Almost too quickly. Why does it feel so hard to slow down? Why does caution feel like self-sabotage? Why does waiting feel unbearable? Because the rush is not just about them. It is about what they awaken in you. A sense of possibility. A sense of being chosen. A sense of finally arriving somewhere you have long been searching for. For some, falling fast is not impulsivity. It is relief. Relief that the loneliness might end. Relief that someone finally sees them. Relief that the search might be over. And relief can feel like love. But love in its truest form is not only recognition. It is revelation. Revelation. Revelation requires time. It requires witnessing someone across different moods, different seasons, different truths. The rush does not wait for seasons. It declares summer in the first hour. And so the pattern begins. Not because you are naive, not because you are foolish, but because something inside you equates intensity with meaning. The heart leaps, the mind follows, and the story writes itself before reality has spoken. Long before you ever fell in love too fast, you learned how love feels, not through words, through patterns, through who stayed, and who didn't. As a child, love is not abstract, it is survival. The nervous system studies every expression, every tone, every delay in response. It asks one silent question over and over: am I safe here? If affection was consistent, the body relaxed. If attention was unpredictable, the body adapted. Some children learned that love arrives warmly and remains steady. Others learned that love appears intensely and then disappears. In homes where affection was conditional, emotional closeness often came in bursts. A parent might be deeply loving one day and emotionally distant the next. Praise could be abundant, then suddenly withdrawn. Comfort might arrive, but only after distress had already escalated. The child does not analyze this. The child absorbs it, and what is absorbed becomes familiar. If love felt uncertain, the nervous system learned to move quickly, to secure connection before it vanished, to cling tightly when warmth appeared, to attach deeply at the first sign of closeness. Because closeness was not guaranteed, it was fleeting. And so, years later, when someone enters your life and offers attention, your body responds not just with attraction, but with urgency. This feels important. Don't lose it. Hold on. People who fall in love too fast are often not chasing romance. They are chasing stability. But their system equates stability with intensity, because intensity was once the only form love took. If attention was scarce, it became precious. If affection was inconsistent, it became addictive. The adult heart may say, I just feel deeply. But the younger nervous system may be whispering, secure it before it's gone. There may have been moments in childhood where you felt unseen, where your emotions were too much, or not enough, where love felt earned rather than given freely. And so now, when someone seems to choose you, quickly, passionately, it feels like repair, like proof that you are finally enough. But here is the quiet complexity. Sometimes you are not falling for the person in front of you. You are falling for the feeling of being chosen in a way you once needed. The speed is not random. It is learned. Attachment patterns form early. They teach you how long to wait, how much to trust, how quickly to merge. Some people learn to pace themselves because love in their early years felt secure. Others learn to rush because love once felt fragile. Falling fast is rarely about recklessness. It is often about longing. Longing for certainty. Longing for reassurance. Longing for a connection that does not disappear without warning. And so when chemistry appears, it feels like an answer. Like something sacred. Like something that must not be delayed. But beneath the urgency is a younger version of you, still hoping that this time love will stay. Love feels spiritual, but it is also chemical. When you meet someone and feel that instant pull, your brain begins to change. Quietly, powerfully, almost invisibly. Dopamine rises first. It is the molecule of reward, of anticipation, of pursuit. It does not whisper. It excites. Dopamine floods the system when something feels new and promising. It sharpens focus. It magnifies possibility. It makes small gestures feel monumental. A single message can lift your entire mood. A delayed reply can cloud your entire day. This is not weakness. It is wiring. Then comes oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone. It increases with touch, closeness, eye contact. It creates warmth, trust, a sense of merging. But here is what the brain does not always distinguish: novelty and safety activate similar reward pathways. The same system that lights up during genuine intimacy also lights up during unpredictability. In fact, unpredictability can intensify dopamine release even more. When affection is slightly uncertain, the brain becomes hyper-focused. It wants resolution. It wants reassurance. And uncertainty keeps the system engaged. This is why intense beginnings can feel so intoxicating. The combination of novelty, attraction and intermittent validation creates a loop. The more unsure you feel about the outcome, the more invested you become. You think you are falling for them, but you may also be responding to the chemical crescendo inside you. The early stages of infatuation can temporarily lower activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for critical thinking and long-term evaluation. In simple terms, The ability to assess red flags becomes softer. Idealization becomes easier. This is why you might overlook inconsistencies, why incompatibilities seem small, why warning signs feel negotiable. The brain in its heightened state prefers reward over caution. For someone who already carries an anxious attachment pattern, this effect can feel amplified. The nervous system is primed to scan for connection. The moment it finds it, it accelerates. The bond forms not gradually, but urgently. Because urgency feels like relief, and relief feels like love. But chemistry is not compatibility. Intensity is not intimacy. The brain is designed to bond. It is designed to seek closeness. But it is not always designed to wait. And waiting feels uncomfortable when the reward system has already begun celebrating. This is why slowing down can feel unnatural, even painful. It can feel like suppressing something beautiful, like denying fate. But what if the discomfort of slowing down is simply the brain recalibrating? What if depth requires the dopamine to soften, so that clarity can return? Infatuation is not fake, it is real, but it is temporary by design. The question is not whether the spark is powerful. The question is what remains when the chemical storm settles. Because love that lasts is not built in the surge, it is built in the quiet after. Beneath every rush, there is often a fear, not loud, not dramatic, just quiet and constant. When you fall in love too fast, it can look like passion, it can look like confidence, it can look like certainty, but sometimes it is protection. Because if you secure love quickly, you do not have to sit in the uncertainty of whether it will choose you. If you attach fast, you do not have to tolerate the space where rejection could grow. Speed becomes a shield. For some, the deepest fear is not heartbreak. It is abandonment. The subtle dread that someone will leave once they see everything. The worry that if connection is not locked in early, it may dissolve. So you give more. You open faster. You merge sooner. Not because you are desperate, but because waiting feels dangerous. If love once disappeared without warning, your nervous system learned to anticipate loss. It learned that closeness is fragile, and fragile things must be held tightly. You might notice how quickly you begin imagining permanence, how soon you start planning a future, how naturally you rearrange your priorities. It feels romantic, devoted, all in. But devotion that arrives before safety is established can carry anxiety underneath it. A quiet tension, a subtle hyper-awareness of their mood, their tone, their consistency. Are they pulling away? Did that text feel shorter? Are they losing interest? The flame burns bright, but it flickers easily. People who fall in love too fast often struggle most with emotional ambiguity, the in-between, the undefined stage. The slow unfolding. Ambiguity activates fear, and fear seeks control. Control can look like closeness. It can look like constant communication. It can look like needing reassurance disguised as passion. Yet beneath it is a younger echo. Please don't leave. Sometimes falling fast is an attempt to outrun emptiness, to avoid the silence that comes when no one is texting, to quiet the feeling of being alone with your own thoughts. Because solitude can feel like evidence of unworthiness when love has historically felt inconsistent, so intensity becomes a distraction, a solution, a lifeline. But love that is fueled by fear carries tension. Even in its happiest moments there is vigilance, a subtle scanning, a readiness for something to shift. The tragedy is not that you love deeply, it is that you fear losing it before it has even had time to grow. The flame rises high, not only because it is warm, but because it is afraid of going out. And when fear fuels connection, the body confuses survival with romance. The question is not why you care so much. The question is what you believe will happen if you don't. When you fall in love too fast, you are not only responding to who someone is, you are also responding to who they could be. In the early stages, the mind fills in the missing pieces. It sketches qualities that have not yet been proven. It connects small dots into larger meanings. They remembered your favorite song. They spoke gently about their past, they looked at you with intensity, and suddenly a story begins forming. You imagine how they would support you during hard times. You picture how they would grow. You assume depth from fragments. This is not foolishness. It is projection. Projection happens when the heart places its own hopes onto another person. It takes desire and dresses it up as certainty. It sees potential and treats it as reality. And potential is intoxicating. Because potential cannot disappoint. Not yet. It exists in imagination, untouched by contradiction. It allows you to fall in love with possibility rather than presence. Sometimes you are not bonding with who they are today. You are bonding with who you hope they will become. You may ignore subtle inconsistencies because the larger narrative feels too beautiful to question. Red flags look like misunderstandings. Emotional distance looks like mystery. Incompatibility looks like something love can fix. The fantasy is cohesive. Reality is slower. This pattern often develops when you learned early to search for hidden goodness. Perhaps you once hoped a distant parent would soften. Perhaps you believed that if you loved harder, someone would change. So now when you meet someone with fragments of warmth, your mind builds the rest. It is easier to love the version you imagine than to examine the version standing in front of you. And when you fall fast, there is little time for contradiction to interrupt the narrative. The relationship moves quickly from attraction to attachment, skipping the careful observation that protects clarity. You may say, "I just see something special in them," and you might. But ask gently, is it who they are, or who you need them to be? Projection feels safe at first. It keeps hope alive. It keeps excitement burning. It allows you to invest emotionally before vulnerability has been tested. Yet projection can also create fragility, because when reality begins to surface, through conflict, through unmet expectations, through simple human imperfection, the fall feels sharp, not because they changed, but because the image did. Falling in love too fast often means falling in love with a story, and stories are powerful, but they require time to become true. There comes a moment when the intensity softens. The messages are still there, the presence is still there, but the electricity is quieter, and for someone who falls in love too fast, this quiet can feel terrifying, because when the dopamine settles and the novelty becomes familiar, the relationship begins to shift from spark to structure, from fantasy to reality, from projection to presence, and presence is less dramatic. You begin to notice small differences. The way they handle stress, the way they respond when they are tired, the rhythm of their attention when life becomes busy. The ordinary starts to replace the extraordinary. For some, this is where intimacy begins. For others, this is where anxiety returns. If you are used to intensity as proof of love, calm can feel like loss. Stability can feel like boredom. Predictability can feel like emotional distance. You might start wondering, why doesn't it feel the same? Did the magic disappear? Are they pulling away? But the truth is quieter than that. The brain cannot sustain the chemical high of early infatuation forever. It is biologically designed to stabilize, to return to balance. The storm settles because it must. Yet if you equate love with the storm, the calm feels wrong. This is where many fast love stories fracture. Some people leave searching for the next spark. Others cling harder, trying to reignite the intensity that once felt so alive. But intensity is not meant to last in its original form. It is meant to transform. The shift from high to steady is not a failure. It is a threshold. And thresholds are uncomfortable. When the high fades, what remains is something more revealing. Not fireworks, but foundation. Not urgency, but consistency. You see how they handle disagreement. You see how they show up when it is inconvenient. You see whether their words align with action. This is where real compatibility begins to speak. For someone who falls in love too fast, this stage can feel disorienting. Because without the rush, you are left with yourself again. Your own thoughts. Your own insecurities. your own space. The connection no longer distracts you from loneliness. It no longer floods your system with reassurance every second. And that can feel like withdrawal. But sometimes what you are grieving is not the person. It is the intensity. The high fades so that something slower can grow. But if you have only learned to trust the flame, you may not recognize the value of embers. And so the question becomes, can you stay when it becomes quiet? There is a kind of love that does not rush. It does not sweep you away in the first conversation. It does not promise forever in the first week. It does not burn so brightly that it blinds you. It unfolds. Slowly, almost quietly. For someone who is used to falling fast, this kind of love can feel unfamiliar, even unsettling. There is no dramatic crescendo, no overwhelming certainty, no intoxicating urgency. Instead, there is pacing, space, time. And time can feel dangerous when you are used to securing connection quickly. Slow love requires you to tolerate uncertainty, to allow someone to reveal themselves gradually, to resist the urge to merge before compatibility has been tested. It asks you to stay present rather than project forward, and presence can feel vulnerable. When you slow down, you notice more. You see inconsistencies early. You recognize differences before attachment has made them painful. You allow curiosity to replace assumption. But slowing down also means you cannot hide inside intensity. You cannot use constant excitement to avoid your own fears. You must sit with the natural rhythm of getting to know someone. For those who fall in love too fast, this stage can feel almost like emotional withdrawal. There is less adrenaline, fewer dramatic highs, more stillness, and stillness can feel like emptiness, if you are not used to it. Yet beneath the quiet something steadier begins to form. Trust built not on chemistry alone, but on repetition, on consistency, on small reliable actions. You begin to see who they are across different moods. You observe how they handle discomfort. You learn how they repair misunderstandings. Love becomes less about intensity and more about alignment. It does not feel explosive. It feels grounding. And grounding may not feel romantic at first. It may feel neutral, even ordinary. But ordinary is where real connection lives. Because real love is not just about how strongly you feel in the beginning. It is about how safely you can remain when the novelty fades. Learning to stay does not mean forcing attachment. It means allowing attachment to form at a pace your nervous system can tolerate, without overriding your discernment. It means asking gently, do I like who they are when the spark is quiet? Do I feel steady here, not just excited? Slow love teaches patience. It invites discernment. It allows space for both desire and clarity. And sometimes what feels less intense at first becomes more enduring over time. Perhaps you have been told that you love too much, that you attach too quickly, that you should be more careful. But rarely does anyone ask what your heart was trying to protect. Falling in love too fast is not a character flaw. It is a strategy your nervous system learned long ago. To secure warmth before it disappears, to hold on to connection before it fades, to quiet the fear of being alone with your own longing. It makes sense. When love once felt uncertain, urgency felt wise. When affection once felt inconsistent, intensity felt reassuring. When being chosen felt rare, attachment felt sacred. You were not foolish. You were adapting. The rush, the projection, the deep early devotion, all of it was your system trying to create safety as quickly as possible. Trying to build certainty in a world that once felt unpredictable. But safety built on speed is fragile. Safety built on time is resilient. There is nothing wrong with your capacity to feel deeply. Depth is not the problem. The only question is pace. Because love that is meant to last does not require you to abandon discernment. It does not require you to silence doubt. It does not demand that you merge before you are known. It unfolds, and you are allowed to unfold with it.
You are allowed to observe before attaching. You are allowed to enjoy chemistry without mistaking it for commitment. You are allowed to let someone prove themselves through consistency rather than intensity. Falling fast once helped you survive uncertainty. Slowing down may now help you recognize safety, and safety does not always feel electric. Sometimes it feels calm. Sometimes it feels almost quiet. But quiet does not mean empty. It means steady. If you recognize yourself in this pattern, there is no shame here. Only understanding. Only compassion for the part of you that longed so intensely to be chosen. Love is not meant to be chased or secured through urgency. It is meant to be revealed through time. And perhaps the most powerful shift is not loving less, but loving at a pace where you can still see clearly. Music. If parts of this reflection felt familiar, if something quiet inside you was touched, know that you are not alone in this pattern. Many hearts have learned to rush because they once had to. Many nervous systems still carry the echo of uncertainty. There is nothing broken about wanting connection deeply. If you'd like to stay connected, this channel is simply a space where we explore the hidden corners of the human heart. Gently, honestly, without judgment. And if you feel comfortable, you're welcome to share your thoughts below. Not because you have to, but because your words might help someone else realize they are not alone in theirs.